Well, I don't quite know whether moderator is the right, we'll just have to see if that's the right word, but I do have a clipboard, and I've got a lot of questions. So hopefully you'll be stimulated by those answers, if not the questions, and we'll certainly invite people here to make their own contributions, and feel free to ask your own questions as well. We have got a set part at the end for that, but if you feel like something whet your interest on the way, then please feel free. It's a relatively intimate group, and I should tell you, these days I'm a high school teacher, so I'm seeing you all as a room full of unruly year 10 boys. Yeah, put that phone away. Anyway, this is the first time I've done a country, and can I say it's an honour and a privilege to acknowledge that we're meeting here this evening on Gadigal land. We're at a place where culture has been practiced for thousands and thousands of years here on the edge of the harbour. The Gadigal are part of the rich and harmonious Eora nation that stretches west all the way to the Blue Mountains. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay my respects to the elders, both past and present, and to any Aboriginal people here tonight. Okay, I was also going to make a disclaimer before we start about my memory. It is 40 years ago today. Peter was saying earlier it's 40 years ago today, since, not today exactly, since the Sunny Boys started. There's a lot of things happened 40 years ago today, and my memory is not quite as good as it used to be. I used to feel as if I had an encyclopedic knowledge of what was going on in Australian music in the 70s and 80s and some of the 90s as well. But these days, although I can remember all the bands, I can't remember where I saw them. And I can't remember when it was. So, although we're theoretically... No, I hope that the common theme today, you sure they were around in 82? Anyway, things will clarify, I'm sure, and I've already noticed various experts in the room, so I'm certainly not going to be trying any high wire acts. I won't be bluffing anything, and certainly you should jump in if you feel like you've noticed an imprecision. Okay. Anyway, I guess Donald's already done the job of sort of introducing the people on the panel. So maybe we'll wade straight in with a question. I mean, you know already, I guess, that the book is not just a collection of Roadrunner magazine from 1978 to 1983. It's actually got 5 really very interesting, provocative essays by Donald in the book as well, which chronicle not only what was going on in the magazine, but what was going on in Australian culture at the time. That's worth the price of admission in my mind as well. I was going to ask my first question about the sense of community, the music community, and actually looking around here, I can see people from all parts of the music community as it was then. But I've just changed tack, and that's, I think, how the night's going to go. Donald, we hear a lot about, your 28-hour days and how difficult the money situation was for Roadrunner, but wasn't it really the best job in the world?
Absolutely. It was always a labour of love, the magazine. It was never financed, didn't ever have any capital behind it, so each issue we relied on the advertising money from a particular issue to pay for the next issue, and the cash flow problems were incredible, and that's probably why the contributors very rarely got paid for their contributions. But
I was meaning to bring that up.
Craig and Pierce, who know him and those who don't. But even though the contributors never or very rarely got paid, I mean, they did get paid sometimes, and I think photographers tended to get paid because they had expenses in, developing their prints in darkrooms and things like that. Even though contributors very rarely got paid, the contributions kept coming in the mail. So I was in Adelaide. I just met Michael Mullane up the back here, who was our Perth correspondent 40 years ago. I've never met Michael before. He wrote some great stuff on the Triffids and the scientists and what's happening in Perth. And that was to me, that was one of the great things about Roadrunner, is that people would send stuff in, and if I thought it was kind of there, reasonably intelligible, I'd print it. And so it was, in many senses, very many senses, a fanzine. So it was people who were fans of the music, who wanted to tell other people about the music. They knew that in Roadrunner, if they wrote something and it was reasonable, it'd get a run. And then they'd write another thing and another thing. It went on like that. So I'm not quite sure if that answered the question. I can't remember what the question is, so I'll go back to Mark.
Well, the question was whether you actually had the best job in the world. It was the best job in the world. He was writing a lot. He was coordinating incredibly talented people. And this actually leads me to the first question I was going to ask, which was about the community. Now, that closeness about the various parts of the music community, the musicians, the venues, the little record companies, journalists, the new radio stations, and even TV shows popped up to support this incredibly rich period of time. And everyone was really scratching each other's back. Everyone was supporting each other. We were all incredibly excited about the music, and one thing led to another. A new journal or a new record company or a new band, and we all climbed on each other's backs, and the thing just exploded. So maybe, Buzz, I can bring you in here, because tell us what the Adelaide scene was like then when Roadrunner started. Because, you were in the Angels, and at that stage, a very successful act. We'd only had the one album, I guess, but you were a big live band. What was the community, the local music community in Adelaide like then?
Well, thank you, and I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people with the Eora Nation. Look, I actually didn't live in Adelaide then. I joined the Angels and then moved to Sydney. But I was going to pick up on the point about everyone working together, because if it wasn't for the Roadrunner magazines and the Ram, or all the other magazines, or the radio stations, the bands wouldn't have had a chance to get their stories out. And if their stories didn't get out, people wouldn't know about them. So it was, everything was connected, and with Countdown and all that sort of stuff, everything was connected. And that was the reason why it all worked. And I think, the Adelaide scene, I was just in Adelaide last weekend, and my time in Adelaide was actually in the 60s, the late 60s and early 70s, so I left Adelaide in 74. But I know that there was a vital scene. You could go to Adelaide and you could play 4 or 5 gigs. Now you can go to Adelaide and you're lucky if you can play 1. So everything was connected, and I think that's what's reflected in your book.
Well, maybe we'll just follow up on the Angels thing a bit, because you were a big band. You were in a situation where a little magazine, no disrespect intended, but a little fanzine starts up. From little things, big things grow. Did you expect to be supported by Roadrunner, and how surprised were you that you were on the cover and along with all the sort of the new, young, up-and-coming bands?
Well, Ross Stapleton was a big part of that, and Ross used to travel around Australia with the Angels and write about what we were doing, and I think that was the thing, that people were immersed in it. Your writers, and the writer in Perth, I remember somebody writing about us in Perth. Actually, we went to Perth and we played a gig in Perth at the Herdston, I think, and then we went to see a band down at Cottesloe Beach, and they were doing Angels and Cold Chisel covers, and they had 1,000 people, and we just played for 500, which I thought was pretty funny. you know, the whole thing was about people being immersed in it, and Ross was a big part of it. He used to travel with us. Again, I told the story before about him driving to Newcastle with us. Newcastle being the first place in Australia where the Angels actually, you know, got traction, because we used to play at Doyle's and RSL every Tuesday night for about a year. And we finally cracked Newcastle, but you know, that was Ross, you know, travelling with us, and I travelled with Ross in 1978 from Melbourne. After we finished at Peter Poynton's, I travelled with him to Adelaide to attend the Talking Heads conference, the press conference, and smoke some hash with Tina Weymouth, and yeah, that was good.
Stop right there.
Okay, Peter, can we bring you in here? From northern New South Wales, relatively isolated from the mainstream music community, were you a music magazine reader? Were you a watcher of television? Did you listen to the radio? How connected did you feel to the music community when you were first starting playing?
Well, in Kingscliff, I grew up in Kingscliff. I don't think I ever saw a music magazine, but we used to buy Tracks magazine, and we could get music information from Tracks. So I didn't, not until I got to Sydney, which was in 1979, did I see Ram magazine. There was Vox magazine, but was that a bit later? That was from Melbourne, yeah, and Roadrunner. But we didn't. I remember being in the surf, and at the surf club, they'd have these cone speakers, and the radio would be on 4GG, I think it was, and I heard Masters Apprentices in the surf, and I went, wow, what is that? It's a recollection. But I remember at school hearing I'm Stranded by the Saints, but I didn't hear ever of Radio Bourbon until I got to Sydney. So that was really where my Australian music education began, was when I got to Sydney. Up the coast we had a big gang of surfers, we grew up surfing, and those wild parties, I was talking to a chap before, and I used to go to the parties and they'd play Slade Alive. And I was like, whoa. So the music we heard was from the older surfers and going to their parties, you know, when we were 15. But music magazines, not until I got to Sydney.
Your timing was perfect, really, wasn't it? Sunny Boys, when you started, there was this incredible explosion of music, explosion of the music community as well. How did you feel about dealing with the business? Did you enjoy, for example, being interviewed? Did you enjoy dealing with record companies? I mean, you were working, I can't remember, I think your first record was at Phantom, that was your first record company. How did that side of it, did it seem like much of a community to you? You weren't hard up against the sort of the major established music industry, were you?
No, I was lucky enough, when I got to Sydney, I had an older friend, his name was Kim Giddy. He played in a band called Lipstick Killers, which was around in Sydney in '79. There was a great inner city scene that I just sort of fell into because of knowing Kim. There was the sort of Radio Bourbon band had finished, and there was the offshoots of those bands playing around, Passengers, Flaming Hands. I met Dare Jennings and Jules Norrington. Jules, they ran the Phantom record store. So I sort of lobbed into this great group of, inner city musicians. There was also a lot of places to play, so our socialising was going out essentially just about every night to see music. I forgot the question as well.